Good evening, everyone. I'll call the Board of Commissioners meeting on June 20th, 2019 to order. This evening, we have the Reverend Paul Helpin Stein from Covenant Presbyterian Church to say our invocation tonight. If everyone would stand and remain standing for the pledge.
Let us pray. Gracious God, fill this place with the knowledge of your presence. Help us to be thankful for the blessings of this community and make us aware of how we together can make it better for all people. Bless these commissioners with wisdom as they hear the business before them and as they deliberate. Give them hearts of justice, equity, and mercy. Bless all those with business before the commission tonight. Give them clarity of thought and purpose. Bless all the civic employees of Johnson City, including all first responders, with success and safety in their work. Make Johnson City, we pray, a place of goodness, opportunity, and wholeness for all who call it home and for all those who cross its path. Amen.
Amen. Face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Peterson, if you'll get us started.
Yes, ma'am. Your first order of business is consideration of the minutes for the regularly scheduled meeting held on Thursday, June the...
Commissioners?
Move for approval.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes.
Your next order of business is consideration of the minutes from your meeting held on Thursday, June the 13th.
Move approval. Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes.
Your next order of business is to have our dear friend Gary Mabry come up. This is our opportunity to recognize him and to have some fun with our buddy.
Is this when we're doing the roast?
That's just for starters.
Oh, okay. I got the Don Rickles book handy. So.
Well, Commissioner Hunter got the email about the dress code right here for tonight. We're going to have Mr. Mabry sit right where he is. I have a
Okay.
few kind of introductory remarks before we get into the meat and potatoes of things. I would like to, under full disclosure, we're going to be celebrating 31 years of Gary Mabry's impact of this community tonight, but I've known him for almost 60 years, and I can certainly recall the click, click, click in the hallway of Science Hill High School in the mid-1960s with Gary with his bass Weegians, and the guys back in those days, if you recall, would put metal taps on them, keep them from wearing down. And so we go back a long, long way. The one thing about Gary, he may have had his Madras shirt on or his ROTC uniform, one of the two, but he was always Mr. Chamber of Commerce walking down the hall. And I think Gary was priming himself, even in high school, to be the role that he has served in the rest of his life. You were a couple years ahead of me, but as 18-year-olds, we both exited Science Hill High School in really kind of a chaotic time in our country's history, with Vietnam casting a cloud over our country. For you, though, you answered the call of military duty, and you served this country, and we want to thank you for that service. Gary, as I was thinking about the impact you've had on the community, I thought of three things that I will always remember you by, of how you've had this great impact. And the first one is you've served as a role as a kingmaker. Did you know that? You've always had the insight in finding the best in people and helping them realize their potential. You've looked into the future needs of this community, and you've encouraged these people to serve just in the right places for the benefit of the community, and you've helped them be that person. Secondly, you've always been a matchmaker by being able to convince the right people to get around the table to solve big issues, even if they didn't want to. You assembled diverse groups to work together for the greater good. You've championed programs and was personally a mentor to many, many potential new leaders. You've always kept your eye on preparing the future leadership of our community. And the third, with your constant optimism and love for your city, your county, your region, you never failed to remind others through your actions that focusing on the warts detracts from the incredible, awesome place where we live. Our jobs as ambassadors of the region is to stay above the fray, especially when the fray is a special interest distraction, and you've helped us realize that. So here we are, 53 years since you clicked down the halls of Science Hill, and we hear that click, click, click of your footsteps all over this region. Gary, if you ever doubt your impact on the city, just hop in your car and take a tour around town, and you'll see those Bass Weegians almost everywhere you look. So we thank you for your tireless service to this community, and I did a little bit of math. If you've been working for 31 years with the Chamber, and you only worked 8 hours a day, you would have given over 65,000 hours. But we know you didn't work just 8 hours, and so we thank Jackie for sharing the balance of those hours with us and supporting you and sharing with you all the joys of this community. The two of you have shown your support with your presence and your treasure at so many of the activities in the area. So, Gary, the only thing I think I'll miss is looking out the front doors here and looking over and knowing you're not in that White House across the street. Because I know that you will continue and always be working for the betterment of Johnson City, Washington County, and this entire region. And so we thank you, and I personally thank you as a friend and someone that you have personally taken me and said, go for it. So if you'll join me and Jackie down front.
This is when the fun starts. Thank you, ma'am.
So here we're at Science Hill. I've never thought I'd be standing here reading this to you at all. Ever.
Never thought I'd get out of Science Hill.
Whereas Gary M. Mabry, oops, they're going to be beeping at me back there.
Yeah, just about.
Thank you. Whereas Gary M. Mabry has served 31 years as the president and CEO for the Johnson City, Jonesboro, Washington County Chamber of Commerce, and has served as past president of the Tennessee Chamber of Commerce Executives, and as a member of the Tennessee State Chamber of Commerce and Industry and Tennessee Business Roundtable Board of Directors. There are a lot of these things in here, so get ready, folks. And whereas he graduated from the U.S. Chamber's Institute for Organizational Development and completed the American Express Leadership Academy, and is certified chamber executive by the American Chamber of Commerce and Executives. Did you know all that?
I'm still trying to figure it out.
And whereas he served on the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Board and held prominent positions on several of their committees and boards, including the Small Business Council, the National Security Task Force, Accrediting Board, and Chamber of Commerce Committee of 100. And whereas he completed the Kingsport, Bristol, Washington County, Virginia, and Johnson City Chamber leadership programs and received the Distinguished Leadership Award as part of the National Community Leadership. And whereas he co-chaired the Vision 2025 Committee and served as chair of the Tri-Cities Tennessee Virginia Partnership Board while facilitating with 4 regional chambers, Tri-Cities, Tennessee, Virginia, and was a recipient of the National Civic League's All-American City 1999 Award. And whereas he is recognized by the Tri-Cities Business Journal as Tennessee, Virginia Executive of the Year, and was named as one of the Business Journal's top 50 over 50. We might have to change that age now, right? and was cited in the Journal of 100, who make an impact in and day out in the region. I'm sorry, I apologize. And whereas he is an ETSU alumni serving on several ETSU committees and boards, as well as serving on the Milligan College and Tusculum University President's Advisory Committees, the Frontier Health Board of Directors and is the former chair and campaign chair of the United Way Board. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Commissioners of the City of Johnson City to hereby recognize Gary M. Mabry for his distinguished service and dedication to our community. Be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be presented to Mr. Mabry along with well wishes in his future endeavor. Now, you're going to get a chance to say something, but in a minute. Okay. Mr. Peterson, would you like to come down?
And how long have we known each other?
31 years or a little better, I guess.
Or a little better.
Yes. Gary,
Sir.
you know, there are a lot of memories over the 30 years that we've worked together. The mayor mentioned seeing you across the street. I remember seeing you coming across the parking lot most mornings, making the mail run, shall we say. Gary was just as regular as clockwork. You know, a little bit before 8, Gary's going across to the post office to get the mail. Smile on his face, foot of snow on the ground, hail falling out of the sky, or a bright sunny day. There you were, Mr. Energizer Bunny, you know, leading the charge, very happy and positive about everything. And I think this community has certainly benefited from your positive nature, your unending energy, and your drive for success. Your personality has certainly been contagious for many, many hundreds of people across Northeast Tennessee. And we enjoy a lot of the successes that we enjoy today due to your desire to see things happen. You've never been one that felt like you had to be out in front. You're, I guess, more of a pusher than a puller. It's nice to put somebody else on the point and make sure that they have the tools necessary to get the job done. And I guess one other thing I always think of, and I have to look at Commissioner Calhoun when I say this, you've always been a stickler for prepared notes, and you've always got them. And like Dr. Calhoun, I never have them. I just can't do that, Gary, you know. But we certainly appreciate you. I mean, you've been a true friend to the manager of this organization and this organization for decades through some really thin and some thick too. And when things looked cloudy and there was a lot of dissension or negative discussion, Gary was always the one to pick up the phone or just show up in your office and say, hey, here's all the good things that are happening, and we need to stay focused on the good things and just, as you and I say, just do the right thing. It'll always be the right thing, and good things will happen. So I certainly, on a personal and a professional basis, owe you a great deal of gratitude for all of the support and leadership you have exhibited for our community, and look forward to working with you for many more years. You may think you're going to go home and sit around, but we know that's not going to happen. We're not going to subject Jackie to that. And as the mayor pointed out, Jackie, you have been an unbelievable supporter, friend, wonderful wife. You have shared Gary with many thousands of hours, well beyond 8 to 5, and you're always right there with him, and without fault, without ever a missed opportunity. Gary always mentions Mrs. Mabry and I, and if it weren't for Jackie, we wouldn't be doing this, and it's very obvious in his actions and what he says that he certainly appreciates all the support that you've given him through the year, and for that we're very grateful to you. As a fellow MCM grad,
Yes, sir.
many people may not know that, but Gary is a holder of a Master's of City Management degree from one of the early years of the program. And
That was a good program.
I'm not sure what you just said about me, Gary.
And it's
But
still a great
it's still a great program. But we've got one other thing that we would like to present to you. Mayor, if you'll hold this. Yeah. This is a picture with one of Gary's favorite sayings and a picture of one of his favorite locations,
Thank you.
Johnson City.
Yeah,
Do you want to go ahead and say it for us?
it's all good. It's all good.
Very
Good
good.
job, dude.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Not yet. Not yet. Commissioners, would y'all come on down?
We have a song
Y'all
we're
have
going to
a
sing.
short agenda tonight? They probably turned over to watch TV Land or something. Come on. Are we singing?
Well, I have the microphone. I don't sing very well, I can tell you that.
All
So,
right.
Gary, we have one more recognition that we would like to present to you. I'm going to give the commissioners a chance to say a couple of words first. It's going to be the first ever kind of recognition that we've ever done. So you're the test case on this. So, but anyway, I'm going to start down with Commissioner Calhoun.
Well, this is very appropriate. The "it's all good." I can't say it like it's all good. Okay. The first time I ever heard that, I was playing golf with Gary, and standing on a tee box, I hit a beautiful drive. It just wasn't on that hole, and the ball goes flying off the course. And Gary says, "It's all good." And I looked at him like, "Seriously, it's all good?" But everything is all good to him. We know you're always working. We know you're always thinking. And we know you're not done. We just don't know what you're going to do next. I mean, you're not telling anybody yet, but we know you're not just going away. A lot of you don't know the story behind, one of the stories behind the Gatton College of Pharmacy. And it's that there were a group of people who met on Monday mornings in a room over at the College of Medicine, figuring out how we could get a College of Pharmacy without state funds, and how we could get that approved, because nobody had ever done it that way. Gary was at that meeting, all those meetings, and right in the middle of it, and was always there with an idea about how to get it done. And we got it done. And there are over 800 young men and women who are practicing pharmacy right now because of a lot of the work that Gary did personally. And to the point where the university now names an award called the Gary Mabry Community Service Award that's awarded to a pharmacy student each year who not just only does a good thing in pharmacy, but does something for the community. And that's real important. And the last thing I'll say, because I could keep going on and on and on, and we got a long agenda. We have an agenda. Gary, we live and work and play in a better place because of Gary Mabry. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next. I don't have anything bad to say, so that's a good thing, right? Gary is always positive. I mean, every time you see him, and I've known him for a pretty long time also, and I've never seen him down, which is an unusually great trait for someone. So that's been great. Always behind people, always wanting them to do their best and encouraging them to do that. Always sharply dressed. I've never seen him when he wasn't. Even on the golf course, always sharply dressed. And gotten to know you better because of some of the kids you had that came into my office too for years with different injuries and things that we took care of. So anyway, in public and private, he's the same. He's never different. Always positive about everything, positive about Johnson City and the things we can do and where we're going. So I've been very appreciative of everything you've done for Johnson City, and thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Well, as Pete said, some of us have to have prepared notes. It's ingrained in some of us. But as we all sit here or stand here and describe our experiences with Gary, I think one of the words that kind of encapsulates it all is consistent. Because all of the things that we've experienced, you've treated us all the same. And, I appreciate that. And you are a visionary, and you can see the future. I've sat across the table with you at breakfast where you said things about me that I didn't know was true until it actually happened. And I think you know what I'm talking about.
There you are.
But, Gary, you've motivated us all to do more. You've inspired us to be better, and you've always personified the message that I think Johnson City is encapsulated in the phrase, to go all out. And so we appreciate you, Gary.
Thank you, sir.
With respect to prepared remarks, I'm of the opinion that I should be just as surprised by what I say as everyone else. And so with that thought in mind, just to give you some idea what 31 years looks like, when I first met Gary Mabry, I was a freshman at Milligan College. And shortly thereafter, I remember coming to see you as I was looking for employment as I graduated, and Gary Mabry's door was open, and there was a seat in his office to talk about how to go about looking for a job in a place that wasn't my home. And 20 years after that, I was back in Gary Mabry's office having a conversation about a business that I was in the process of starting here in Johnson City. And almost 10 years after that, a conversation about running for the city commission. And as everyone here has said, a consistent voice of encouragement, a champion of our community. Go all out doesn't do him justice. And as we look forward to your next chapter, I just hope and pray Johnson City will be at the center of it. So thank you.
So, Vice Mayor, you teed this one up very nicely. You said go all out really is really not the right words, but what we want to give you is our very first, from this commission, a Moving Mountains Award. And if you will notice, our mountains with a person doing that, and this is to you. And you have certainly moved mountains in our community, and we are a better place because you have been here. So, with that, I'm going to let you speak.
What if I just said thank you and sat down? It's not. I drove through my neighborhood coming here tonight. I went to school at West Side School. My neighborhood, where my mom, my grandmother, my great-grandmother and I lived, was right across from the Carver community, so that was my neighborhood. I rode a bicycle from the corner of Watauga Market all over Johnson City, working for Guy Wilson. God rest his soul, Mr. Wilson. I'm a topper for life. I'm a Buccaneer for life. I really probably was a first year-round student. And the reason, your comment about our graduation, in the 9th grade, I fell in love and failed algebra. My mother decided I was going to summer school, so I literally went to school from my freshman year to my senior year. So I was a year-round student. I'm still in love, and I don't know how to do algebra. I did go in the Air Force in a non-combat role. Loved every minute of it. Came home, worked at Leon Fehrenbach behind the mountain, behind Tannery Knob. Isn't that a foreshadowing? There's a foreshadowing there. I know there's a foreshadowing there. Went away, got a call if I wanted to come back home. So let me do 3 things, and then I will sit down. Thank you for letting me work for you, and all of you who are watching this for working for you. Thank you. Secondly, there are a handful of folks in the audience tonight. 3 of them are about 3 rows back, along with some other folks that I've been delighted to work for. They make everyone look good, those 8 wonderful folks, and a couple of them have been around more than 20 years. And thirdly, I look out there and I see some of you, and I hesitate to say all of your names, but Ness and Charlie and Bob and Phil and our new chiefs and our new attorney. Ladies and gentlemen of Johnson City, Tennessee, you have a phenomenal government. When I sell this community, I say, come here because our government's good. And if you have good government, that means your community's good. And if the community's good, that's where you want to live. And that's where you want to work. And that's where you want to play. And yeah, that's where you want to pray. So, Saul Good, Saul God, thank you very much.
You want to say something, Jackie? Thank you, Jackie. Thank y'all both. You bet.
Thank you. Nice look. Nice look. Thank you.
Have fun, buddy.
With that, appreciate it.
Thank you, Jackie.
I'm sorry, and Jackie, we do have something for you. We have a Grow All Out, so when you go to the farmer's market, you can carry this with you, and a few things from Johnson City. Thank you.
Y'all adjourn early.
You're not staying?
Can't leave, Gary.
Never
You gotta stay for me. No, I.
There we go.
Our next order of business is to recognize Nestor Lavash on his retirement. Ness, if you could come forward, please. We're warmed up now.
Yes, but we feel safer around you. Ness, I told you in the parking lot, I didn't know if I would read this or not, because we really don't want you to retire. What you have done for emergency medical response in this area has been, you've brought it from the ground up to where we are today. I know you're leaving it in good hands, but we kind of wish you would hang around. But I think I saw your wife, and y'all probably have some other things you're going to be doing, right?
I think Charlie from stall forced me out.
You have glasses back there. Oh, I was going to say I've lost my glasses, but here they are in my pocket. All right. Well, it's a real honor to read this proclamation. And whereas Nestor Lavash is the longest-serving director for the Washington County Johnson City Emergency Management Agency since being appointed on June 16, 1999. And whereas he has consistently served not only Johnson City and Washington County, but has also provided leadership support for other counties, including the North American Rayon Fire in Elizabethton from February 25, 2000 to March 8, 2000. And whereas he successfully wrote, received, and implemented the Federal Emergency Management Agency's Project Impact Grant, Building a Disaster-Resistant Community for Johnson City, totaling over $400,000. And whereas he coordinated with the Tennessee Management Agency and the Federal Emergency Management Agency on Presidential Disaster Declaration in 2001, 2005, and 2011. And whereas he has been invited numerous times by the Federal Emergency Management Agency to speak at workshops and conferences in Tennessee, Georgia, South Carolina, California, and Washington, D.C. And whereas he and his office has been the lead agency for the 1st Tennessee Homeland Security District since its formation after the terrorist attack of September 11, 2001. And whereas he was responsible for establishing the first true emergency operations center for Washington County and Johnson City. Now therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Commissioners of the City of Johnson City to hereby recognize Nestor Lavash upon his retirement for his distinguished service and dedication to Johnson City, Washington County, and the Northeast Tennessee region. Be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be presented to Mr. Lavash along with well wishes in his future endeavors. So Ness, thank you so much. We appreciate all your leadership. Thank you. Peterson stayed down here for a reason.
Ness, your friendship and all of your many hours of dedicated service to the community are greatly appreciated. I'm grateful for all that you've done. I'm also grateful for all of the fun that we've had in staff meetings, and I don't know who I'm going to pick on now that you're gone, but
You'll find one.
it's one of those jobs that there's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes that people don't know a lot about. You're always have everybody ready to roll when it needs to happen, and we're certainly indebted to you for bringing us up to a level of service where we feel comfortable that this county and this city are ready to respond to whatever natural disaster or emergency does come forward, and we're very thankful to you. And I wish you many good years of fishing, making nets and boats, and aggravating Nestor when he gets out of the academy here in 3 years. And I'm glad to see he finally showed you how to polish your shoes correctly. Congratulations, buddy.
It's really been a good ride. We've accomplished a lot. We came from down bottom, and now we have a state-of-the-art facility. And with with all of our first responders have worked tremendously with us. I've had great response from them. And I hope that it continues with the city and county to support our agency, and we have some great people taking it over. So thank you very much. Thanks.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thanks for everything.
All right, Commissioners, the next order of business is consideration of a beer license application for Connection Circle Enterprises, doing business at 3020 Franklin Terrace, number 6. This is for a Class 1 on-premise beer license. The appropriate reviews have been made, finding no disqualifying factors, and the recommendation is for approval.
Is the applicant here? Would you come forward, please? Just at the podium, if you'd state your name and address.
Oh yeah, my name is Ho Jung Kim.
Okay.
And I'm
the-
owner of the Yurimaru Kitchen, the business.
Okay, and the address of the kitchen is?
Yeah, 32. 20, the Franklin.
Okay,
Yeah.
very good, thank you. Commissioners, are there any questions of the applicant? Yeah, I'll get to that. No further questions? Have you read all the rules and regulations pertaining to the sale of beer in the city of Johnson City? And do you agree to abide by those? Yes, okay.
Move approval.
All right, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun.
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler.
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise.
Yes.
Mayor Brock.
Yes. You want to say anything about your new restaurant? And you're on TV, so you can tell the public.
Yeah, I'm so proud of my business here because my business, my life, the first time in Tennessee. I live in the Atlanta right now, but my plan, me and my wife, and then I gotta move to the Johnson City soon. Yeah.
Well, your shirt looks delicious.
Oh yeah.
Well, good. So are you open now, or?
Yeah, we opened on March already. But
Okay.
last Tuesday, we were grand opening was.
Very good.
So yeah.
Okay. Well, good luck to you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay.
Mayor, at this time, we would like to ask you to add to your agenda a beer license application for Douglas Carroll, doing business as Go Burrito, located at 121 North Commerce Street.
Move approval to add that to the agenda.
I'll second.
Second? Okay, Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun.
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler.
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise.
Yes.
Mayor Brock.
Yes. Is the applicant here? If you come forward and state your name and address, please.
Mayor, while he's coming up, this is an on-premise beer license application. The reviews have been made. We're still pending responses from police, building, fire, and legal, but the recommendation would be to approve this conditional upon the license would not be issued until all of those reviews are completed and a permanent certificate of occupancy is issued.
We understand that, thank you. Mr. Carroll?
My name's Doug Carroll. Go Burrito is at 121 North Commerce Street, Suite 104 in downtown Johnson City.
So, and you understand what Mr. Peterson's saying, that there are still some reviews, inspections that have to be made to make the application complete,
I understand.
and then the full certificate of occupancy issued. But we're not meeting the first week of July as we normally do because it's on July 4th, so our next meeting wasn't until July 18th. So we're kind of getting out of order here, but only because of that, so
I appreciate the opportunity.
you
So,
bet. Commissioners, is there a motion?
Move to approve conditionally as stated.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Have you read the rules and regulations on the sale of alcohol in the city of Johnson City?
Yes,
And you agree to abide by those?
absolutely.
Very good, thank you. Any other discussion? Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun.
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler.
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise.
Yes.
Mayor Brock.
Yes. Okay, now's your chance. Go ahead and tell us about your restaurant. You can tell the public, since we have a big audience watching.
Well, so Go Burrito is open 11 a.m. to 11 p.m., 7 days a week. We have signature burritos and we have build your own burritos along with tacos, nachos. We do have our state ABC license, so we're looking forward to using that as well as when we get our beer, which is our rum bar. But we have a fantastic view out into King Commons Park. So I hope at least people stop by to check out the view and our covered patio. Feels like you're sitting right there out at the park.
Very nice. I think a couple of us have stopped by, right? Well, thank you so much and best of luck.
Thank you. Look forward to seeing all y'all there.
Thank you.
Your next order of business is to make one appointment to the Board of Dwelling Standards. You have one position open due to Ms. Lockmiller's term expiring. The position has been advertised, and you've received one application of interest from Ms. Lockmiller.
Would move we reappoint Ms. Lockmiller.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Any comments? She's been a great board member. I think this is a very effective board for the city. We want to say a special word of appreciation to all the work they do and working with our codes department. I fully support this nomination again. And so Ms. Jennings, if you would call the roll.
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes, ma'am.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes.
Next order of business is to make two appointments to the Senior Foundation Board. You have two applicants, Ms. Barbara Block and Ms. Teresa Treadway, that have submitted applications of interest.
Commissioners?
I move for approval of those two to be on the board.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further comment? Okay, we're ready.
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes.
Your next
you.
order of business is consideration of the consent agenda.
Commissioners, are there any items you would like to have pulled? We'll start down with Commissioner Calhoun.
Yes, 1B3, please.
Okay. Anything else? Just one?
Just
Okay.
one.
Vice Mayor?
No, ma'am.
None for me.
Commissioner Hunter? Okay, we have one item, B3.
Did you, Jenny, did you have any, or?
No, I don't.
Okay.
No. I would, you know me, I would have.
You would have said it.
I would have said it, yeah.
Double checking.
Yeah, thank you, though.
Question?
All right, Commissioner Calhoun, if you would kind of
Yeah.
ask your question?
Right, just I know this is about the $372,000 tie baler, and I think we've been talking about this for a long time, and I think it's an approach which is, to me, it's really interesting. I'm obviously very supportive of this, but how we got into the quote-unquote, the solid waste business of having our own baler, I think is an interesting story and a unique way of approaching staying in tune with, on top of the recycling and all the stuff going on around recycling. So I thought it'd be good if the public understood exactly what we're buying there for $372,000.
As you know, we had to switch user groups, so we had to start trucking plastics and cardboard to another entity. We get paid on a certain percentage, probably 25%, I believe, 30% of it's a blue book price structure. What the baler does is, if you bale, then you go to 100% of that market. And we felt that, as we discussed this before, we felt that the payback on the baler itself would be in the range of 2.5 years. So we felt like it was very appropriate. What it also does is there is limited market for loose cardboard. That's pack it and into a truck and send it. But there is an expanded market for bale cardboard. So now we're faced with looking at additional markets and to get the top dollar for the product. It also gets us into, again, in plastics, doing the very same thing and getting top dollar for the plastics. There's no question that you have a firm commitment towards recycling. We have all heard of the limitations placed by China, the limitations of contamination in certain waste streams, particularly with glass, and you're having communities in the area having to eliminate glass. We don't. We actually have, in my opinion, the most flexible program available to keep the markets open. And if there are other recyclables that open up in the marketplace, this gives us an opportunity to actually get the top dollar through the baler usage. The particular baler that you're looking at will be here long after we're gone. It is a top-of-the-line baler. Philip and Kathy have done a fabulous job in speccing. Actually visited the plant, visited the baler, so we're very, very comfortable with the product. Again, this just enhances our flexibility in the recycling market. I hope it doesn't constrict. We do see price structures reducing as a result of limited marketplace. But this maximizes our opportunity going into the future.
Mr. Penzola, since we had to change curbside, the items we would take curbside, what was it, about 4 months ago? One of the things we always want to request of our citizens in recycling is to clean their items, wash them out. I'm looking at Kathy down here. Would you say amen to that one, right? Are we finding our citizens, doing that a little bit better now since we've tried to educate them a little bit more? Or should we make another request to our citizens to clean the products, and it will be a lot easier for us to recycle?
They are getting better. I certainly would apologize to any of our citizens who are trying to recycle that we're not picking up some of the items, but we can't. We don't have the market for it. But they are adjusting pretty well. And they're adjusting to keeping the product clean. We, for your note, about, 10 years ago, we actually had to eliminate 10. There is a marketplace for it, but it was filthy. And it just wasn't worth the effort to even try to recycle that stuff. They're getting better. What the public will also see that we've discussed is we're going to really attempt to get a quarterly newsletter out to inform them how recycling works.
Right.
It's not us that's defining the products, it's the marketplace. So we're going to talk about those sort of things and what other opportunities exist. You've heard zero waste streams events. We'd like to pursue that. We have an individual down on Woodland Road who is recycling household waste, garbage, food waste, I should say. So we have some products, and hopefully that expands over time.
Answer your question?
Absolutely. I think when lots of communities are going completely away from doing anything with recycling, I think our staff's to be commended for what you're doing. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, any other discussion? Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes.
Next order of business is consideration of a resolution to annex certain property known as Hawk Landing Annexation. A resolution to annex certain property located within the 10th Civil District of Washington County, Tennessee, adjoining the present corporate boundaries of the city of Johnson City, Tennessee, and to incorporate the same within the corporate boundaries of the city of Johnson City, Tennessee, said property being known as the Hawk Landing Annexation, to zone said property R2 low-density residential as described herein, and to amend the zoning map of the city of Johnson City, Tennessee accordingly, being a part of the appendix to ordinance number 1519, is ready for your consideration on first reading. A song, if you would explain the matter, please, sir.
Mayor, Commissioners, before you is a request to annex a piece of property at the end of Mizpah Hills Drive. There are two parcels that are involved. However, the property owner, Mr. William Hawk, requests that you annex 3.42 acres, the area marked here in striped here in red, into the city limits. This piece of property is in the planning region, the urban growth area of Johnson City, is being requested by the property owner. And it adjoins the city limits. Consequently, it meets the fundamental legal requirements to annex this property. He intends to construct 6 single-family residential lots in the area proposed for annexation and to extend Mizpah Hills Drive in order to provide a required public street frontage to these lots. Staff has completed an estimated fiscal impact analysis, which shows that the initial net fund will be $48,857 and the recurring net fund will be $38,057. The difference results from water and sewer tap fees, which will simply be one-time payments. With respect to plan of services, this area has water and sewer service lines of services available to it, which the developer will simply extend into the subdivision. The city limits actually ends here, and right now, this temporary cul-de-sac is in the county. So that will become part of this area being requested for annexation. Other services will be provided in accordance to city policy effective from the date of annexation. The Planning Commission at its meeting on May 14, 2019 recommended that you approve this annexation and the associated plan of services. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any questions of staff before we move forward? Commissioner Calhoun?
I wasn't at this.
You weren't at that meeting, okay.
Move approval.
All right, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none. Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes. Thank you.
Next order of business is consideration of ordinance number 4693-19, an ordinance to amend the zoning map of the city of Johnson City, Tennessee, being part of the appendix to ordinance number 1519, entitled An Ordinance to Adopt a Code of Laws and Ordinances for the City of Johnson City, Tennessee, and to repeal all laws and ordinances in conflict therewith, and amendatory thereof by assigning a R2 low-density residential zoning to certain property within the 10th Civil District of Washington County, Tennessee, known as the Hawk Landing Annexation. This ordinance assigns the R2 zoning to the property you just dealt with in the previous resolution for annexation.
And since it's running in tandem and we've heard the explanation, I'd move approval. Second.
Motion and a second. There will be 6 lots out of this 3.4 acres.
Yes, ma'am.
Be good. All right, any other questions, discussion? Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes. Thank you, son.
Next is ordinance number 4695-19, an ordinance to amend the municipal code of the city of Johnson City, Tennessee, specifically Title 16, Streets and Sidewalks, by adding a new Chapter 5 related to standards for small wireless communication facilities in the public rights-of-way, and repealing all ordinances in conflict herewith, is ready for your consideration on first reading. Matt, if you could explain the ordinance, please, sir.
Thank you. I'll do
Before
my
you
best.
do,
Sure.
still waiting on the baby?
Still waiting on the baby.
Okay.
Otherwise, you wouldn't be seeing me here
Okay.
tonight. So, thank you for asking. Good evening. Good to see you again. I'm back to talk about small cell wireless facilities. I believe y'all are pretty familiar with the concept and the technology here. Since this is first reading, I'll be brief in my presentation. If I skip by anything and you have a question, feel free to stop me. Just in brief, these facilities are being added to the network to increase capacity. We have an abundance of smart devices that are now pulling data through the network, and so adding these facilities will help assist with speeds. They're low frequency transmitters that are being placed in concentrated in urban core areas where you have higher density. They'll be being placed on existing infrastructure. One of the main concerns associated with these devices is the aesthetics, and so we'll be getting into that. We'll make that a focus of this ordinance. Overall goals of the ordinance are to accommodate the growing need and demand for communication services while also protecting the character of the city and its neighborhoods. That's a big one here. Providing safe, reliable, efficient, integrated, and well-connected rights-of-way, coordinating the efficient use of existing resources and infrastructure, and creating top-notch customer service in reviewing and approving the small cell facility deployment. Again, we have attaching to existing infrastructure, and these will be in the same place as our existing infrastructure or attaching to telephone poles, electric poles, street lights, new poles, and then some signage. Co-location, there's 3 different types of deployment. You have co-location, which is the facility being attached to an existing pole. You have a modified or a replacement pole where you're modifying an existing pole or taking out a pole and replacing it with a new one in the same exact location. Or you have a freestanding.
Back to that slide, you might just point out, particularly if the public's watching this, real quickly, it's hard to tell what the difference of those 2 poles are.
Yes, so this pole has been modified to add, yes, this is the original here, and then the after is adding this, the cantina on top, and then the additional equipment associated with the facility here.
Again, for the benefit of those who may be watching, the concern is if not regulated aesthetically, these have to be deployed very frequently because they're line of sight and limited in their reach. And it's essentially like mounting a dorm refrigerator on the side of telephone poles.
It very well could be, and I have some examples in this that are what we don't want to see. And so you'll see those kind of pop out. But yes, and we'll get into some of the state laws. The other third type of deployment is a freestanding, standalone new pole. And so we've outlined our ordinance with these topics, which lead to this design standards section, which we'll get into in more detail. The state law, the Competitive Wireless Broadband Investment, Deployment, and Safety Act of 2018 was adopted last year, and it outlines what a city really can and can't do in responding to these requests for the cell phone providers to deploy these facilities. The application fees are set by the state. We're adopting those same application fees. They outline how we must go about approval and denial. State law outlines our review process and the timeline, or the shot clock as they call it, for how we go about reviewing applications and responding. And we were adopting those same timelines for our ordinance. The state law also allows for what is called an aesthetic plan. And this is important because it allows the city to control and put limits, as Commissioner Wise pointed out. Here's one on the left here versus the one on the right. You can see quite a difference in those types of facilities. In this case, if the state law has certain specifications in it that conflict with our city ordinance, the city's ordinance will prevail. So the more stricter would prevail. So that gives cities a lot of control. The way we've broken this down and how we're establishing our design standards, we've broken it into the entire city into districts. And those 5 districts are general commercial, general residential, historic commercial, historic residential, and then our parks and schools And here's an inset map that gives you a better look, and you can see the distinctive areas between our historic commercial, historic residential, our general commercial, general residential, and then our parks and schools, and you can see how it kind of spreads out from the core of the city. So I'll go through each one of these districts from least restricted to most restrictive. Our general commercial, we are following as far as height, what the state law allows for. And as far as the pole design, the light design, and the color of those poles, we are allowing, we're directing that towards Phil Pinzola's group to dictate what is appropriate based on the location that they are proposing. So they will look at the existing poles that are in that location and come up with an appropriate design. For general residential, we have the height coming down to 20 feet as a maximum, and then a decorative pole like we see in our historic areas, or a tapered steel pole, depending on what's appropriate for that neighborhood. And then a light, if a light is appropriate, it would be set at 15 feet, and those would be black powder coated.
Matt, what about neighborhoods that are all underground utilities? I guess they will have a street light in there, so it would go on the street lights?
Yes, and if they do have street lights or other, in that case, there would not be any power poles, so we can't really prevent deployment, but we can certainly make sure that it aligns with our needs for lighting, that type of thing. And so if there is some issues with a particular location where it's not a good fit, then we can have a conference with the cell phone provider and try to work that out with staff.
You're going to have some neighborhoods who have covenants. I mean, you're the better expert on this, that would have restrictions on what could go in these neighborhoods.
Yeah, but those restrictions can often get diluted by legislators. But they still have stop signs, speed limit signs, no outlet signs, lamp posts.
Right.
There are lots of places that they can get some profile.
The state law states that we have to apply these rules in a non-discriminatory way. So if there are any other utilities that are allowed to go in that area, then we would have to allow these folks. But if there are no other utilities that are standing, upright, not, above ground, then we would not be discriminating against the cell providers by not allowing them to locate there.
I'll let you get through your presentation and have a last question.
The other statement about general residential is that because of the low density, I think it's less likely that we're going to see requests for those areas. I think there's less bang for the buck for the cell phone provider to put a facility in those types of locations. So I think there's less of a risk. In our historic residential, the school zones, we have a 20-foot height limit. We have a decorative pole requirement and a decorative base, as you can see there. A period style light, which is the type of light we have downtown. Height of 15 feet for a light if a light is needed. The example on the right is over by Science Hill. So basically keeping that same look in our areas around our parks and schools. In our historic residential, this is the height for the facility is 15 feet. They would be required to have a decorative pole with a decorative base, a period style light at 15 feet, and the color would be either the cultural district green, as it's called for our downtown, or black powder coated, which we have in our parks. And so depending on that neighborhood and what was appropriate for that neighborhood, that color would be determined. For our downtown and our historic commercial areas, again, we have a 15-foot height limit, a decorative pole and period style light requirement, and that cultural district green would be the required color. So those are all, if they meet those standards that I just outlined, then that would be approved by staff. That would be an administrative approval. If they want to go outside of that, then they would have to go a discretionary process, which would go through the Planning Commission. If they want to modify or construct a facility that doesn't meet those, it would go to the Planning Commission. Or if they want to do a new standalone facility, or they want to put a facility where there is no other utilities, like you mentioned, that would have to go through Planning Commission. So there'd be a lot more discretionary review in those cases, which gives the city more protection. and can be, can encourage cell phone providers to go the administrative route and just abide by the ordinance. So just in closing, what this does is provides minimum standards for providers that have been established by the state and federal government. This will allow the city to adopt an aesthetic standard to guide specific outcomes and limit negative impacts. And then this proposed ordinance wraps all that together in one package to guide this, the deployment of small cell facilities. So, any questions?
A couple. We don't have anything on the horizon that we know anybody's coming into the community in the next 3 months or so.
We have already received an application.
Okay, so we have one application.
Yeah, for three locations.
Okay, so that leads to my next question. How do we inform the public that this is coming? Maybe our friends back in the booth can help us with that somewhat. But, I think about neighborhoods who may want them, but then, it's very different from what they have now.
Right.
And we get, being on the Bright Ridge boards, we get requests all the time. People want our utilities underground now as it is, and now we're just going to be adding, or not we, but this is just going to clutter even more.
It very well could, and I think that's a really important reason for this to move forward as quickly as possible so that we have something in place that can prevent them from just being put up wherever they wish. We do have some review right now and have luckily had a good relationship with the providers that have applied so far, but any future applications would have to go through this once it's adopted. I do think it's important to educate and create awareness in the public. They're going to see some kind of new, strange facilities or poles going up with weird boxes on them. And so but I also believe that this is something that's happening nationwide. It's just the next step, the next development in this process. I think people are going to be used to in a couple years. Everybody's going to know what these things are. Everyone will be used to it. It probably won't be seen as strange. But we just want to make sure it's done well here in Johnson City for sure.
It would be good, Mr. Peterson, if we could get some kind of, once we get through passing this new ordinance, that we get some kind of press release out so that.
Well, I think David and Richard just agreed with me when I
Good.
said I wanted to talk to them. So we'll try to get that started.
So we got a story. Very good.
Sounds good.
Any
Thanks,
other
guys.
questions of Matt?
I'd move approval on first reading.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion, questions?
I'm just glad we're getting ahead of it, kind of like we're
Yes.
doing with the bikes. So
That's right.
we have some sort of plan when they come instead of it being a surprise to us that
Absolutely.
they're on a pole somewhere. So.
Good job putting that together.
Thank you.
Great work.
Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun.
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler.
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise.
Yes.
Mayor Brock.
Yes.
Commissioners, your next order of business is consider approval of a resolution to make increases to the solid waste fees. What is being proposed in this resolution would be to increase the fees in the city system for front-load garbage and recycling dumpsters by $7 for each size dumpster, and then the fee for the front-loader extra pickups will increase by $25. I will emphasize this has no impact on residential collection. This is commercial dumpster collection and industrial roll-off collection in the city system. Last year, we did a $2 increase on the city residential piece. This resolution also increases the residential curbside collection fees by $2 in the regional system. And the front loader garbage collection fees will increase by $7 for each size dumpster, just like they are in the city. We would, and I guess for a little further explanation, the regional system, curbside for one cart is currently $16. It will go to $18. And, of course, there is no residential adjustment inside the city. We would recommend your approval, and your solid waste budget is built with these rate increases included on the revenue side.
When was the last time these rates were raised?
2010, it's been 9 years.
Cost of goods and services have gone up just a little bit.
I would suggest in 9 years, they've probably gone up at least 25%. Yes, ma'am.
I will move for approval.
All right. There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any other questions, discussion? Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun.
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler.
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise.
Yes.
Mayor Brock.
Yes.
Next item for consideration is ordinance number 4691-19. An ordinance to revise, update, and add new sections to the code of the city of Johnson City regarding alcoholic beverages, beer, and wine by amending Title 8 of the Code of the City of Johnson City, Tennessee, and repealing all ordinances and parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, is ready for your consideration on third and final reading. And there will be an opportunity for public hearing this evening.
Commissioners, we're going to briefly go through some of the revisions that are taking place in Title 8. Again, there is an overall reduction of the general size to the title by approximately 23%, so almost a quarter of it has been reduced. Repetitive language has been removed, outdated terms have been removed, and what we're going to do is go through each of these larger changes. The entitled title has been reorganized for ease of reference to our users. As we've seen earlier in today's meeting, we do ask those applicants, have they read the ordinance or the title? Do they understand that? The reorganization is going to make this even more user-friendly for those whenever they are reading this. Repetitive language, again, has been removed. The definition section has been moved from Chapter 3 to Chapter 1 to the beginning. With that, we've added in additional definitions, including beer, clubs and lodges, minors, and restaurants. All the repealed sections have been removed in their entirety, again, for the ease of reference and reading. Sections that were no longer in compliance with state laws have been removed or updated. We have updated provisions in our title to correspond with Tennessee liquor laws regarding the Sunday sales. And again, Title 8 references all the alcoholic beverages, not just beer, so there is some reference to these alcoholic beverages as well. We've removed references to outdated terms, including Coliseum, tonics, biters, and face lotions containing alcohol, as well as references to individuals loitering under the ages of 21. There will be a new application after the ordinance is approved. If the ordinance is approved, there will be updates to the application. Primarily, those updates are going to make, again, this an easier process for the applicants. You should each have a copy of the current application as it exists. If you go online right now, what you pull up is what the applicants see. That is what has been there. That, again, is in reference and compliance with the current title. The changes that are taking place with the new, to the revisions to Title 8, it condenses the classes, which has an implication to the application. There are references to requirements asking for 10 years' worth of residency. That would be in the current title, current application. Those things are going to be removed, so the new application would correspond with the updates to the ordinance. Again, in the licensing section, the current title, current application, has subsections that would go A through O. The new revisions that have been suggested and proposed would be A through H. So there's a reduction in the size as well for our applicants. One notable change that is an update to the Title 8 would be the inclusion of Pine Oaks Golf Course and being allowed to have beer sales. Pine Oaks Golf Course is a part of the Parks and Recreation, falls under their purview. The same as Cardinal Park, there is currently an exception that exists for Cardinal Park. Pine Oaks Golf Course is going to be similarly situated to Cardinal Park with regard to the sale and consumption of beer. Another notable change that is in the new title is the removal of any of the prohibiting language with regard to alcohol sales and beer sales at theaters. This includes all theaters that would be within the city. For the purposes of getting a larger view of some of our community surroundings, contiguous states, we have looked at other areas that have similarly removed any of their prohibiting language or that have allowed allowances for the sale in theaters. Specifically in our research, it was focused to movie theaters because that is the most notable thing that's accessible right now as far as research purposes. So in Tennessee, currently offering the sale of alcohol, there are 9 different cities in the state. Looking a little bit beyond, since we are located closely in proximity to other states, we've looked at North Carolina. You can see there are actually 15 different theaters in North Carolina, and then expanded that search into Virginia also. So this is a fairly common practice in other areas as well. There.
Okay, any other questions of Ms. Santos before I open the public hearing? Thank you very much.
Did you, sorry, did you create this new application? Is this, I mean, you developed this, or where did this come from? I was just going to say it's really nice, and it is, I've just glanced over it real quick, but it's...
Sherry Keenan actually put in a lot of time working on that.
Yeah, well, it's good. It's succinct and easy to read. So.
All right, I will open the public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak for or against this ordinance? We did have one request. Is Mr. Baker here?
Yes.
Okay, if you'd step to the podium.
Sure.
And you're here to speak on this topic, aren't you?
Yes.
Okay, come forward and state your name and address, please.
Thank you, ma'am. I do appreciate y'all's service to the city, and thank you for this opportunity to speak with you. My name is Joe Baker, and I live at 212 Moulton Circle in Gray. And I am a youth minister at Oak Grove Baptist Church, and also drive a school bus for Sullivan County. I'm concerned about opening this up to serve alcohol at these theaters because of the youth, who, from the best I could determine, buy about 40% of the tickets at these theaters. When youth go to restaurants and places like that, usually they go with parents or family. Most youth that I know of that go to theaters, they're not supervised by family. I know I wasn't growing. It's not cool to go to a movie with your mom, okay? And there's just not that influence there. And I do have some handouts if any of the commissioners are interested, but it's easily accessible online. I did want to share just some statistics with you about youth and the effects of alcohol on them. Alcohol is found in the offender, victim, or both in almost half of all homicides and serious assaults, as well as in a high percentage of robbery, sex-related crimes, and incidents of domestic violence. Although drinking by persons under the age of 21 is illegal, people aged 12 to 20 years drink 11% of all alcohol consumed in the United States. More than 90% of this alcohol is consumed in the form of binge drinks. On average, underage drinkers consume more drinks per drinking occasion than adult drinkers. Almost 2.3 million Americans between the ages of 12 and 17 report drinking alcohol each month, according to the latest National Survey on Drug Use and Health published in September 2017. The CDC's Youth Risk Behavior Survey that was done in 2017 found that among high school students during the past 30 days, 30% drank some amount of alcohol, 14% binge drink, 6% drove after drinking alcohol, 17% rode with a driver who had been drinking alcohol. More youth use alcohol than tobacco or other illegal drugs. And some of the problems that you face, such as school problems, higher absence, poor or failing grades, social problems, fighting, lack of participation, legal problems with the police, hurting someone while they're intoxicated, physical problems such as hangovers or illnesses, unwanted, unplanned, and unapproached protected sexual activity, including pregnancy, disruption of normal growth and sexual development, physical and sexual assault, higher risk for suicide and homicide. And the list goes on. Abuse of other drugs. Alcohol affects all these things. In 2010, there were 189 emergency room visits involving alcohol use in people under the age of 21. Teens who begin drinking before age 15 are 6 times more likely to develop alcoholism later in life, according to drugrehab.com. And there's a correlation between teenage drinking and diminished brain development. It affects the brain development, the cognitive development. Alcohol impairment among drivers involved in fatal crashes in 2010 was 4 times higher at night than during the day, 37% compared to 9%. And that's when most people go to the theater. That's when these kids go out to the theater. And
Mr. Baker, I'm sorry. I failed to mention you have 3 minutes when you got up there, and I do
Okay.
apologize, and I think
Okay.
we really get the gist of the list
one
that
more
you're
thing,
reading. But
ma'am,
if you
I
kind of make your
can.
concluding
I
remarks.
will. Car crashes are the leading cause of death for teens, and about 1/3 of those are alcohol related. Ma'am, with the money that theaters charge for tickets, and by tripling, quadrupling prices for drinks, popcorn, and candy, it just amazes me that that's not enough. And I cannot see how passing an ordinance such as this, and maybe your hands are tied, I don't know, but I cannot see how this will better our community or further protect our youth. And to me, it's not a matter of fairness, it's about a matter of money. That's why this request has been brought before the commission. They see an opportunity to make money, and I'm concerned about how it will affect our youth. It does. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Baker.
Very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak for or against? Okay, seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. Commissioners, this is on second reading, or third reading. Is this
Third reading.
Third reading, I'm sorry. Is there a motion? Do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. Any further comments? Questions? Okay.
I guess I would respond to Mr. Baker, and I appreciate his concern and the work he does with youth. I think as a community and as a state, our law enforcement, and I know those selling in Johnson City, do what I think to be a significantly better job than par of requiring IDs and of checking IDs. They check the ID of my 80-year-old father if he tried to buy beer at Kroger, and I think anyone who's stood in line in those stores has observed that happening, and that's true in restaurants. There's so much risk to those businesses in not doing that. So I want to separate the conversation about legitimate public health and public safety concerns that were raised tonight and certainly have been a part of our consideration of this on prior readings, from whether it's appropriate to single out a particular legal business venture and say it's excluded or exempted. It can't be a part of what is already in our ordinance. There's a beer ordinance that says businesses are allowed to come and ask for a beer permit. We aren't giving anybody the permission to sell beers in theaters. We're just taking from the ordinance the language that says you absolutely can't, we can't even consider it. So, and we've had applications, as city staff can attest. There have been people who've applied for beer permits that on background checks and inspections of facilities never even come to this commission. So there are people who have sought to sell beer in our community who could do so because they aren't specifically a theater, who are allowed to petition, and they may still not get it because there are issues either with prior bad acts, selling to underaged, or whatever it may be. So I'm going to continue to support it on third reading, not because I'm excited about exposing young people to alcohol, but because I just in my mind can't single out that a theater creates a unique public health or public safety risk that a trampoline park selling beer doesn't, that a bowling alley selling beer doesn't. So that's my 2 cents. Maybe it was $1.50, I don't know.
I give lectures to medical students and residents and athletic trainers on injuries in sports. And I always tell them that you can look at all the injuries, and the ones on the field, you can separate what they're getting, but we're more concerned about them when they leave the field on Friday night, what's going on after that with these kids. So I understand not wanting to have beer accessible to kids, but that's why whoever gets this beer application approved is responsible for making sure that the right people get it, and it's taken, and they oversee who gets it and who doesn't get it, and we have the law behind that. So, yeah, I agree with him. We need to watch our kids and what they're getting access to, and because of those statistics, we need to be careful. But I don't think just singling out theaters, like Joe said, I don't know that that's a big thing to stop it, you know. So I don't really like opening it up for other places to sell beer, but there's enough places you could get it that this doesn't make that big of a difference, one theater in town compared to going to Chili's or some other restaurant and getting beer there, or again, you've got to show an ID to get it, or some 21-year-olds with 5 18-year-olds and they buy 6 beers, then we're going to watch who gets those things. So somebody's going to be watching. So,
Any other comments? Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun,
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler,
yes.
Commissioner Hunter,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise.
Yes.
Mayor Brock.
Yes.
The next ordinance for consideration is ordinance number 4692-19, an ordinance to establish the property tax rates, appropriate funds, and adopt a budget for fiscal year July the 1st, 2019 through June 30, 2020, ready for your consideration on third and final reading. Laura? We have incorporated the changes you have discussed at your previous 2 readings into the ordinance that is before you this evening for approval.
Okay, as we discussed Monday evening, there are a couple of things that we need to kind of address before, when you vote on third reading, to approve this amendment as well. The first 2 are actually together for one particular item. When we originally put the budget together, we identified the Economic Development Reserve as a funding source for improvements at the Learning Center at Pine Oaks Golf Course. In subsequent conversations, and as we really kind of got to looking things here close to the end, it's really not an appropriate funding source for that, because the intent that the commission has for those particular dollars restricts it just to be a capital project. In this particular budget, we don't have a capital project identified. There is enough capacity in the Park and Rec budget and golf budget to accommodate the same dollar amount in regular maintenance items, landscaping and repairs, nothing structurally. If we get into that this year and there are structural issues or things that need to be addressed, we can take those monies and transfer them over to the Capital Projects Fund without affecting the budget in any particular way. That's just something we will talk to finance about as they determine what happens over there. That's the first 2. The third one for the General Purpose School Fund, once the school board finalized their budget week before last, these were just the final changes and tweaks to their revenues and expenditures and a little bit of addition to their fund balance drawdown.
Well, we've seen this. and we've seen it again.
Yeah.
And we saw it a couple more times on For Good Measure. So I feel like we've sliced and diced this every which
And
way.
thank you for your time. I mean, y'all dedicated quite a bit of time this year to approve the budget.
And so
We
with
appreciate it.
that, I would make a motion, but I'd like to put a caveat on the motion. I'd make a motion to approve the budget as it's been presented. The caveat I'd like to put on that motion is that while we're appropriating funds for the Convention and Visitors Bureau and the Johnson City Development Authority, disbursement of those funds be subject to the successful integration of the city's single, distinct, and ownable brand and branding elements. And with that is my motion.
I'll second it, so we can have discussion.
All right, there is a motion and a second.
I've got a question, I
We'll
guess.
open it up for discussion then.
Mayor.
Yes.
Joe, for clarification with that, where would, or what would your expectation as to the point person, or is that too in-depth? I want it to be clear as to what you're wanting
Yeah.
and where it needs to go and how it needs to be processed.
If it would be helpful to identify that in the motion, Mr. Peterson, what is your sense? Whether,
That gives us real clear direction. That way we
okay.
know that.
I mean,
we're-
I would add that successful integration is defined by Keisha Shown. So they get their money when Keisha's satisfied. Not that there's any pressure back there.
So, I guess, as a motion, I'll second that amended motion.
There's a motion amended and a second to the amended
For the
motion.
clarification, yeah.
Everybody clear what that means?
especially, are you clear?
I'm going to go back and listen to the recording.
It's a motion to approve the budget as Laura has presented it, and the only caveat is related to two funded entities that market the city, the CVB and the JCDA, incorporating a single distinct and ownable brand that is the city brand that we've invested a considerable amount of time and energy in. So that's the rationale for it.
Okay. Any other discussion on that? Okay, before I call the vote, Mr. Peterson, to you and Laura and Dustin and Mr. Wilson and all, thank y'all so
Thank you.
much for, we know how much time we've spent, so we really know how much time you've spent. So my final question is, have we found any more revenues that we can add to the budget?
No, ma'am, not at this point.
Yeah, so just,
Don't stop looking.
We don't.
No surprise checks
We
in the
don't.
mail, any of that thing.
just to the public, growth is slow. And so this is a very conservative budget with very little growth programmed into it. We need people particularly. We've heard it said like this before, shop local. But what it really means is that as everybody's pushing that buy on your internet sales, it's affecting your local schools because sales tax is what funds our local schools. And we may be getting a little bit back through internet sales, but we're not getting back anything compared to what our local option sales tax produces. And so that sales tax money gets split with the county, and 100% of the county side goes to schools. Half of ours goes to our schools, and then to help support our fire and police. So we're seeing a flattening in our sales tax. So we just need to get the word out. Think about it. I know it's convenient. I've ordered online, I know it, but I try not to. And it's kind of like plastic. I'm not even taking plastic straws in the restaurants anymore. So we just have to make some little changes, but we have to think about that. We're beginning to see, I think, some impact of internet sales. So that's my plea to the public. All right.
And Mr. Peterson, this is a balanced budget, correct?
It is a balanced budget, but I will point out to you that that is reliant on pulling down your fund balance for some capital projects and equipment and pulling down your economic development reserve for some economic development projects, which is what that fund was set aside for.
Right.
I know probably everybody saw this last week that Elizabethton's raising their property taxes to really make up the the loss of the hall income tax, as it was stated publicly, and we've lost close to $1 million to our revenue line, will soon.
It's gone. Hall
because
income tax is worth about $1 million a year to us.
The General Assembly
Yes,
did away with hall income tax, which is just a tax on capital gains. So we've got to figure out how to make that up, right? I keep looking at you, and I know you're going to come up with.
Oh, the wheels are turning, don't worry.
Okay, very good. Any other comments? Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
Next is ordinance number 4696-19, an ordinance authorizing conveyance of real property owned by the City of Johnson City to Triple G Ventures LLC, located at or near 119 North Commerce Street, upon the terms and conditions contained herein, and repealing all ordinances and parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, ready for your consideration on third and final reading.
Your motion.
I'll make that motion. Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Just, it's worth noting, we're just clearing up a property line. The building's been sitting on the other property for 100 years, and we're just trying to get the property line to match where the building is, so.
Yes, sir.
All right. Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes.
Next item for consideration is ordinance number 4697-19. An ordinance authorizing the conveyance to Fang Ang Shu certain parcel of real property and easement owned by the City of Johnson City, Tennessee, and located in Washington County, Tennessee, upon the terms and conditions contained herein, and repealing all ordinances and parts of ordinances in conflict herewith. Again, this is an existing business where the required parking lot is located out in our right-of-way. We are giving them an easement to leave that parking lot there and reserving all rights for utilities to go in and make modifications, expansions, repairs, replacements. And we have protections in there against claims for loss of business or revenues as a result of any work we may need to do in our right-of-way. We would recommend your approval.
Move approval. Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes.
Your next item for consideration is approval and acceptance of a grant in the amount of $4,000 for a creative placemaking grant. This is being put forth through the Johnson City Park and Recreation Foundation program, which will supply the 25% required local match. The source of the grant is the Tennessee Arts Commission, and this will be used to do more wraps of the traffic control boxes in the downtown area. We would recommend your approval.
Maybe they can wrap the new small cells.
There's going to be a lot of them.
That's a good idea.
Is there a motion?
Motion approved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes.
The next order of business is consideration of a Sesquicentennial Sculpture Selection Committee recommendation. This would be for you all to approve the commissioning of artists Jeff Reed and Jennifer Madden to design, fabricate, and install a proposed sculpture in the middle of the Legacy Plaza History Circle down at King Commons. This is a part of the Sesquicentennial project downtown. And in your packet are pictures of the proposed artwork.
Okay, we have already approved the budget for that project back in May.
The budget has been approved, and the funding source for this is a combination of public and private money, as is the entire project downtown. Yes, ma'am.
Commissioners?
What was our total commitment?
The budget part on this was $750, right, Phil? On the entire history circle piece.
How about for the entire Sesquicentennial, what was our overall budget?
The city put forth $1.3 million total for the entire project, and there was a fundraising committee put into place, They have obligations for at least $250,000 for the second phase, call it the natural area. I keep wanting to call it the playground. Natural adventure area. And to date, I think they've raised about $200,000 cash. Okay, I could.
Some of those funds are designated for each project. Like some people donated specifically for the Legacy Park project, and then some people donated specifically for the natural adventure area, which is to come.
I didn't even know I had donated, but I apparently made eye contact with Lester Latney, so
Yes.
we all did. I'm
You're
pledged.
you're on the donor wall, for sure. We all are, yes. Gentlemen, is there a motion to move forward?
I'd make a motion to move forward, and I think that with the condition that, and correct me if I'm wrong, it'll stop the motion because it's a lot of words. The contract comes back before us, or the contract is approved after our approval of moving forward tonight? Because we really don't have a contract yet, is that correct? Pardon me? It'll come to us at the next meeting. And in between now and the next meeting, could the Sesquicentennial Commission be updated on this, make sure everybody's seen it, et cetera? Because I know there was a great committee that was put together that did this selection. We had people fly in from all over the country, and I'm not an art person. I'd probably put a football in the middle of it, and said that's really nice. But a lot of people spent a lot of time on this, both in preparing the whole project and in this particular aspect of the project. And I just, when it comes back for approval of the contract, I'd just like to make sure that the Sesquicentennial Commission has said, yeah, that's great, that's where we want to go.
My one comment is that this was really the first time I've heard about this. I knew that they were doing something with the circle and all, but I didn't know there was going to be a large amount of money put forth for an art thing besides what we were doing for the legacy part with all of the things from history. Because I will speak for Ralph Van Rockland right now. He wanted to get a big cake, and that was about it for the whole Sesquicentennial. Wanted to spend about $300, and we were done, kind of thing. So we went a little over what he wanted to spend for this, but I'm not sure I would have voted for $150,000 of taxpayers' money to go to this art project. I would have kind of expected that to be more of a fundraising project from the art committee to do this. So.
And I think a portion of this will come from private fundraising. The budget for that history circle was the $750, of which this was a part of that budget. This was a part of the line item to begin with. We just didn't see how much as they were trying to get to what it was going to be.
And again, that dancing fountain with music to attract lots of families to come down there is still one of my pet projects I'm not getting to get with our Sesquicentennial, so.
Well, it appears this will light and the lights will change.
It's not the same as a dancing fountain. Anyway.
Now, there is the opportunity for a third part of this project down the road. I think we've talked about that, and actually the fundraising, when we got the sticker price back on the first two parts, this is when I was still on that commission. It shocked me a lot. And I think basically we realized we can't do all three of those. But there's some nice plans, preliminary plans, to do exactly what you're talking about, that hopefully after the Sesquicentennial, somebody will take that on and complete it. Good point. So I guess my motion is that we approve this moving forward with the condition that when the contract comes back, it has the blessing of the Sesquicentennial Commission.
I would second that motion.
And I would just add, seeing this for the first time Monday night, it looks fairly modern, and we're doing a history circle there, but I've really given it a lot of thought. What we are putting in stone or in granite is our history to date, so that we will never forget. And the feature in the center of that is really kind of modern and imaginative, that it takes us into the future, so it kind of melds those two things together. We have, as the commission, as the city, celebrating our 150th birthday that we're kind of in charge of, this is the legacy we're leaving behind. And I hope, I've already talked to my grandchildren in 50 years when the time capsule's opened up. I won't be here, but I want them to remember, but this will still be here. And hopefully they'll think well of us, that we thought enough about our city to make it kind of special. This is a one-of-a-kind thing that I'm looking at here, the picture. I think it'll draw a lot of people in to come and see it. I'm going to vote for that, but I do agree with Commissioner Calhoun that we need to make sure all the members of the Sesquicentennial Committee have seen this. Okay.
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fallon?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter? Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
And Mayor Brock?
Yes.
The next order of business is consideration of a bond resolution relating to the refinancing of the 2010 Build America bonds and Series 7J1 public improvement bonds. Janet, I'll let you explain this, please, ma'am.
Okay. At the last meeting, you were presented with a copy of what we submitted under the mayor's signature to the state comptroller's office, requesting that they grant approval for us to refund the bonds that Mr. Peterson just told you about. The state has to review these to ensure that we comply with our own debt policy. We do comply with our own debt policy. That debt policy says that in order to do a refunding, you would want to have net present value savings of no less than 3%. This particular refunding, in fact, would reap a debt service savings net present value terms of 7.2%. So there's the potential for us to save over $3 million through 2040 on these particular bonds. To tell you some particulars about the majority of the bonds in question, these were or are still until the refunded Build America bonds. This was a program that was offered by the government whereby we would issue taxable bonds, and understanding that taxable bonds typically carry a higher interest rate, the federal government through the IRS would subsidize the interest expense. Since that time, through some cutbacks at the federal government level, our subsidy has reduced. A few years ago, when we went through some hard times at the federal government level, they reduced our subsidy by 8.3%. We still have a reduction of about 6.3 to 6.6%. So each year it changes. It's called sequestration. We have the opportunity to kind of rid ourselves of all that, unknown circumstances from year to year, and these will be refinanced as tax-exempt debt. So thus, we're going to reap some really good savings. The reason the term on these goes out to 2040 is because at the time the Build America bonds were being marketed by the federal government, that was the term that was set. So they were 30-year bonds. We typically don't like to go out over 20 years. So this is going to be a really great opportunity for us. So you received a copy of that report from the comptroller's office that did grant the approval for us to move forward with this transaction. You're required to review that prior to considering the bond resolution that is before you. So that's why, we wanted to give you some ample time to read over that and ensure that you had an opportunity to ask questions. Then what you have before you for consideration is the actual legal document prepared by Mark Mamontoff, our bond attorney, who does a great job for us and has for years. This resolution would authorize the issuance of general obligation refunding bonds in the aggregate principal amount of not to exceed $44.5 million in one or more series. So we would ask that you consider approval of the resolution so we can move forward with this refunding.
How much total do you think this will save us by refinancing?
It is $3.1 million. And that would be a mixture of general fund money and water sewer money. The Build America bonds were about half and half.
So if we don't approve, we won't save money.
It'll save me a lot of work if we
All
don't
right,
move
so we have a
forward.
motion. Is there a second? And a second. Any other questions or discussion? Is our finance guy down on the end down there, Commissioner Connor? You're good with it?
Yeah.
You're good for saving money?
Saving $3 million.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
Let's vote on it.
Commissioner Calhoun?
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Mayor Brock?
Yes. Mr. Peterson, I'm going to ask Chief Turner to come up now, if that's all right with you.
Yes, ma'am.
He's going to give us just an update, since we're not meeting before the 4th of July. Chief is going to give us just a little bit of update on the fireworks issues, because I know your phone will be ringing. And thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioners, Mayor Brock asked me to speak for just a couple of minutes on some of the challenges that we face during this time of year, and of course the 4th of July. There's a lot of illegal use of fireworks in the city, and there's a city ordinance 11-139 which prohibits either the sale or the use of fireworks inside the city. Of course, it happens all over the city, but one of the neighborhoods that was most adversely impacted was West Davis Park, which would be West 8th Avenue, West 9th, 10th, Davis, Jackson, Montgomery, in that area. Last year, we answered a number of calls there, a number of calls throughout the city. In fact, this is a very conservative estimate. 103 calls for service from July 1 through July 5th in the city, and I would say you could easily double that, because lots of times when people call 911, they'll get multiple calls on fireworks at a location, so I think you could easily double the amount of calls that we went on. Sometimes they don't know the location and they just tell us an area to look for fireworks activities. So with that being said, that's a very conservative estimate on just that 4-day period of what we answered. We had 20 charges last year for violation of that city ordinance. 13 of those were adults and 7 of those were juveniles, and some of those charges were in reference to the activity in West Davis Park. And we followed up on tips that we received, on some information we received from some of the residents, and what we gathered ourselves out there to place some of those charges. So those were just a few of the charges, and there were some in other parts of the city as well. In response to the West Davis Park, the problems that they had last year, and the problems that they had were they had people who were discharging fireworks in the neighborhood at other people, at residents of the neighborhood, and at the police who responded to answer those calls. And those were the concerns that some of the residents in West Davis Park had. And I met with them after the 4th of July last year at their neighborhood meeting, and we have been working with them ongoing since that time to come up with a better strategy to address some of the issues they're facing. And one of the things that they spoke to me about was the fact that a lot of the people who come into the neighborhood and use fireworks and set off fireworks don't actually live in the neighborhood, and that they come from other parts of the city or outside the city to come in to do those illegal activities in their neighborhood. So they were very concerned about that. And so in response to that, we plan on conducting some overtime patrols in the neighborhood leading up to the 4th of July. The neighborhood association, they drafted a flyer that they were going to hand out to the residents. And Mayor, I think you may have received a copy of that via email. So we're going to print those, and the officers that work those overtime details, they will assist the neighborhood association in getting those out to people inside the neighborhood. And that lists the city ordinance in the flyer that they have, and it also lists some of the things that could happen if you use illegal or illegally use fireworks in the neighborhood. So we plan on doing that. We also plan a public service announcement campaign with our communications and marketing department to publicize not only that it's illegal to use fireworks, but also the dangers of using fireworks as well. And so we will start that the first of the next week. One of the local news stations, they're running a story, and we've been working with them as well about the dangers of fireworks. And some of the fireworks that were used down there last year are very similar to what is in the exhibit at Freedom Hall. So they're large fireworks. They're very dangerous. And as you know from the 4th of July fireworks that Pepsi sponsors, they have professionals that come up and they set up a zone, and there's a safety zone, and there's a lot of safety precautions.
And they're shooting them up.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Not at people. Critical difference.
Not horizontal.
And that is a great difference as well, Commissioner. But in addition to those things, we're going to take the officers that are working the 4th of July, the fireworks detail at Freedom Hall, and they will be answering calls in the city, and we will have a large number of those which will address those problems in West Davis Park. And I met with a couple of the neighborhood association leaders last week, and we discussed the flyer that they had in our plans, and they were very comfortable with those as well. So that's what we're looking at this year, and it's basically a more coordinated use of manpower than what we had last year. And there'll be some additional cameras in the neighborhood as well. We were able, like I said, to do some investigations after the fact and place some charges after the fact last year, and so we can replicate that as well this year.
And a number of the arrests in West Davis Park were juveniles, correct, that go to our local schools?
Yes, ma'am, and a lot of the people who provided information, they knew that they were some of the students from our local schools. So the meeting that we had last year, I think the school system, Dr. Wallace, if I remember correctly, attended that meeting, and so he's aware of that. And our SROs are talking with some of the coaches who have some of the students that were named. There were certain sports teams that were named as having members up there, so we're hoping that they'll be able to help us with that as well and discourage those young folks from coming up there and using those fireworks illegally.
Thank you, Chief. Any other questions?
Thank you. Thank your officers that will be working when the rest of us are not. So,
thank you, Commissioner.
Thanks a lot, Chief. All right, Mr. Peterson.
Mayor, we're going to mix this up a little bit. Financials are in your package.
Okay.
You're free to read them. I think it'll be pretty self-explanatory as many times as we've been through them.
Also left you a commentary, so that'll help.
Okay.
We got it.
The other thing I'll draw your attention to is in your packet also is what we've labeled the construction project invoice report. That has a listing of all of our projects in process, projected completion dates, recent payments, are we on schedule, not on schedule, et cetera. So that's got a lot of good information in it that will be helpful to you. I will draw your attention to a couple of those. One being the Langston project. It looks like that Langston should be finished up and ready to open up sometime early August, thereabouts. We've got the contractors getting close, but we need to get the contractor off-site before Public Works can get back in there and complete the grading. General Shale has been kind enough to donate the material and the labor to build the brick columns and put the boundary fence up. They've had a production unit go down somewhere within their system, and they've pulled those people off to go get their production facility up and running. They will not be back on site until sometime in July. So it looks like it's going to be an August update at this point in time. We've got the police training building under construction. It was supposed to be substantially complete last week. It's probably running about 3 weeks late. The primary holdup there is the contractor that was supposed to put the metal soffits and fascia boards and those things up. They're having a real hard time getting them on site, so the building's going to be usable probably before it's going to be completely finished.
We send the police out to make sure they come? Since it's their facility.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
The Liberty Bell project is coming out of the ground. They're pouring footers, bringing steel up out of the ground. It looks like it's moving slow, but right now we are assured that we're still on schedule. And every time I see Randy Trivet, I tell him to be sure and remind the contractor, the architect, and Mr. Burleson that if that gym floor bounces, I'll ruin all of them. They have promised us that elevated gym floor will not bounce. If it does, they've never seen me as mad as they will that day. That project better be right, and it better open next August. I mean, that's the game plan. I've got confidence in them to this point. I hope that we all have confidence in them after the project. I just want to get that on the public record here.
I'll write it down here from tonight.
Freedom Hall, cup holders are in. The opening in the ceiling should be getting closed up, the frames in place. You approved this evening a contract to move the electrical distribution box that's down on the floor. Things are looking good up there. You all know about the John Sevier project moving along. Buffalo Valley Mitigation Project. Our consultant is in the process of doing a study of the wildlife and the vegetation in and around the creeks. That's a requirement of the environmental review folks. Once that's completed, which we think will happen in the next couple of weeks, that information will be submitted to the state and to the Corps of Engineers. Once they sign off on that, that will tell us exactly where the limits of the mitigation can take place and how many credits will be available to us. And we will bring that back because that will determine our potential return on investment. If you authorize us to move forward, the engineers will develop the construction documents and we will implement that with public works crews over the late fall and winter. Wing Deer Park field design, we've seen an initial early version of what that's going to look like. That's moving along and they're starting to put preliminary cost numbers to that project.
Is that the soccer fields or the new softball fields?
That is soccer and softball fields at the Wing Deer location. Yes, sir. As you're aware, recently the state passed legislation that allows us to develop a retail and recreation zone or a tourism zone out at Boones Creek exit. We've been in discussions with the state about what their expectations are. We're starting to develop the boundaries of the zone at this time. What we're shooting for is at your July 18th meeting, we'll make a presentation to you outlining what we're projecting the zone to be. You will need to adopt what the boundaries of the zone are. And there's also a requirement for what I'm going to call a business plan that has to be submitted to the state for their approval as well. And that may take a little more time to develop, as it looks like we're going to be dealing with multiple developers. And they've got to put their business plans together in such a way that we meet all the state criteria. I've had discussions with Economic Development and the Department of Revenue, and they were very thankful that we reached out to them to ensure we got off on a good start and everybody understood what was going to go on out there. So
Does that acreage have to be identified all at one time?
It does.
You can't add on later?
you get one shot to establish the zone, and whatever you established is what it's going to be. So I've got some technical questions I'm getting answered as to where you measure from point A to point B. Does all the parcel have to be in the half-mile area or just some part of the parcel? Some pretty technical questions that the state's been really good to help us try to develop answers for. Charlie and Sonny and I are working on a new lease with ETSU for Freedom Hall and their basketball program. Their current lease doesn't expire until a year from now, but we want to go ahead and get that in place. Part of the one of our water sewer projects this year is the rehab of sewer and replacement of water between Buffalo and Rome Street. That design is pretty well complete, and we're coordinating now with Blue Plum, Umoja, downtown users as to the timing of that project. That's going to start sometime in August probably, and it's going to be a very similar project as to what we did on Rome Street when we rebuilt Rome Street from state of Franklin to the railroad tracks. The street's going to be closed for a couple of months in all likelihood because it's going to be a total rebuild. We've coordinated with Bright Ridge on getting their fiber installed down there. They're going to do the downtown area with the exception of those couple of blocks so that they don't install it and then we dig it up. So the coordination there has been good.
While we're in that neighborhood down there, would you remind me, did we convey Cherry Street to the property owner there?
We did not.
Okay, we still own Cherry Street.
We do.
But it's being
rebuilt by the adjoining business and property owners.
we
gave them the money to buy the materials, and they're doing the work.
Are we going down and supervising any of that work?
Some.
I would just suggest maybe your next lunch downtown, just walk by.
Interestingly enough, I had lunch and dinner both down there on the same day last week, and every now and then I get a real desire for swirled.
I'm just not sure the quality of the job that's being done.
Phil and I had that conversation
Everybody's
earlier
going to
this
think
week.
the city's doing it.
I'm not going to cast blame on anybody at this
Okay.
point, but I expressed those concerns to
Well, if you
Phil,
know
and
and Phil
we need to
knows.
open up a good dialogue with the ones doing the construction.
Yeah, the hardscape's uneven. It's,
Yes, ma'am.
okay, thank you.
There's a variety of other projects going on, and I'll be glad to answer any questions or take any direction you may have.
I'll tell you, when you look at this list and you wonder what our employees are doing, everything.
You know what they're doing.
It's huge. It really is.
How they're doing everything.
This is really helpful.
And
too. It
probably
really
the one
is.
I didn't mention publicly, Green Line at People Street, we're going to get that back open to traffic before we're going to be completed. There's a very significant retaining wall that's going to go in front of what was the old Kmart. But we're really focused on getting the roadways and curbs and gutters finished so we can turn traffic in there. We can do that after that gets opened up.
And the lighting, I guess.
The poles are going up to this week for the traffic signals. They were out there yesterday or the day before when I went by trying to get holes drilled. So hopefully in the next 3.5 weeks or so, that intersection will be completely open to traffic.
The Langston building looks great from the outside, and it certainly has improved the curb appeal coming down through there.
And that's another, and I mentioned the additional site work that Public Works has to do. That whole neighborhood is scheduled for street resurfacing, curbs, gutters, sidewalks, to go in with some CD money and help some people improve their properties. And that'll be a target area of very significant investment in this upcoming fiscal year.
Any other questions of Mr. Peterson or Janet? Okay. We've added public input back to the
Public
agenda.
input, yes.
Is there anyone here who has come to publicly input? All right.
Now, for
let's
those at
move on.
home, those of us up here know there are very few people left in the room.
Right. Okay, is there anything else?
Adjournment?
4th of July, fireworks will be at Freedom Hall as usual. It's 10 o'clock start. Would invite everybody up to enjoy a professionally designed and implemented fireworks program that is safe and legal. And do not buy fireworks, do not shoot them at home. It's a bad feeling when you blow fingers off and get eyes put out and set your yard on fire. Fire chief's over here shaking his head as hard as he can. Please do not use fireworks in the city. It's illegal. We'll do you a great show at Freedom Hall. Come enjoy it. We'll even give you a free ride from ETSU or Winged Deer Park up there. You won't even have to drive.
We have competition at Dr. Calhoun's house, I think. He's up as high as.
Not shooting fireworks,
You
though.
better not.
He's watching. He's
Because we have drones.
We're going to be watching you, Dr. Calhoun.
Oh, no.
All right. Well, thank you. Again, to the public, we will not be meeting on July 4th. That was our next scheduled meeting. Our next meeting will be on July the 18th, which means we won't see each other again until the new budget year. So this is a big night tonight, as we kind of.
Happy New Year!
So, anything anybody else wants to say?
Well, the four of us are going to be playing the Mayor's Cup tomorrow.
In the morning.
So we will be seeing each
That's
other.
right, we will.
It's going to be
That's
fun.
right. Yeah,
Let
it's
it be
gonna
known,
beautiful.
our mayor challenged
It's on the
the
video.
other cities on a video that we're going to
on the
win.
video.
Yeah, how'd you like that
Well,
shot?
I'm sorry I'm not one of the
Pretty good
four.
shot.
And we're gonna have to give you lessons or let you ride in the car and keep score.
That's right, there you go. It'll be the most accurate score
I'm
for the
sure.
four of you.
Unfortunately, that probably is true. We don't need him coming up.
All right, thanks a lot, Pete, to all
Thank
of the
you.
staff,
Great
and meeting adjourned.